Hello everyone, and welcome to the Executive Commute. My name is Jayson Krause. I'm the founder of Level 52 and the author of The Science Behind Success, what every leader needs to know about mindset, influence, culture, and performance. In this episode, I'm going to expand on our newsletter content where I explore 4 things. What leaders are asking, different ways to think, the laboratory, and a question to ponder. It's October. Fall is here. This is my favorite time of the year for many reasons. One, for those of you who know me, 2 of my passions are NFL, college football, and Broadway musicals. And they both get rolling in this time of the year. And also, as a big football fan, one of my favorite things is to coach my son's football team. I love all of this stuff, but when it comes to the work at Level 52, we get to dive into some deep work. Management offsites, strategic planning, debriefing 2024, and ramping up for the upcoming year. And just like trees shed their leaves to prepare for regeneration, our clients are doing the same thing. The cycles of life reflect the cycles of meaningful leadership. It's an incredibly rich part of our work. So, with that being said, let's jump into some of the richness that we've got in this episode. If you've been listening to this podcast, you already know that in our work, coaching executives, senior leaders, and training leaders at all levels, we get a lot of questions surrounding the unique struggles that these leaders face. We choose one of those questions each month that we think you'll find interesting, and I expand on it. This episode, the question is, how do you perform like an executive? It might sound like an odd question. This is a question that I get from executives that have the role already, from aspiring executives, and because I work with C-suite and aspiring C-suite leaders who fit the label of being an executive, here's an important line I want to underscore. Not all executives work like executives. What I mean by that is many executives are so caught into the weeds, doing the work required for the business today, instead of focusing on reinventing the future of the business and developing the leaders and the systems and the direction that help shape that future. And I get it because it's very easy to get lost in the details of today when they're staring you down. However, the real task of an executive is to be looking ahead, to envision and shape what's needed and what's next. Which means it's about lifting your head from the grindstone of today and creating the space to gaze at the horizon of your industry, of your business, the gaps that you foresee in the future and how you're going to address those gaps. In our accelerated leader programs that we lead at Level 52, we talk with leaders about the massive difference between a spending strategy and an investing strategy. But the resource isn't money. The resource is time, intention, and effort. If you spend those precious resources consistently on what's needed today in this moment, you will fall into a deficit. When you carve out the precious resources that you think you need today, but invest it for the slow and compounding progress towards the future, when you do the right things in the right way, you will benefit from that investing strategy that will yield results down the line. This is the work of an executive. More investing for tomorrow, less spending on today. However, it's a wicked habit to try to battle. It's doing things like cultivating a team of leaders around you who can drive the tactical elements the business needs today, move it forward, so that you can focus on the strategic, high-level decisions. So when I say this, I want you to ask yourself, are you working like an executive? Or are you just doing the work, the same stuff you were hired to do a decade ago? You're just doing it better and faster. Remember, you cannot reinvent the future of your business if your head is buried in the weeds of today. Working in the weeds is a real and significant challenge for so many leaders taking the next step in their title. I use the word title very intentionally because your title can change, but it doesn't mean anything if you don't change to match the title and the new requirements that your role is expecting from you. If you're thinking about this and you're going, okay, but my title probably isn't about to change. Here's the thing, don't wait for that title to change to adapt your strategy. Start working like an executive now, build those habits so that it's not such a disruptive change when you get that title that you want and deserve down the line. Daniel Rizia is an executive at Google, and he's written a great article titled How to Get Ahead of Everybody Else by Behaving Like an Executive. I'm going to post it in the show notes, but it's a resource that I send to our executive coaching clients, especially those who struggle with operating in that habitual spending strategy mode. The article does a great job of breaking things down, what it means to work like an executive so that you can perform like an executive. I'll share some of those key points for you to consider. To create a baseline understanding, what does it mean to be an executive? Forget the title. An executive is simply a knowledge worker who can significantly impact an organization's results through decision making and taking responsibility. You can be an executive who can do this, and you can deliver like an executive regardless if you have that role. And I really want to stress this. You do not have to be an executive to do the stuff that we're going to talk about. In fact, the more you can develop the responsibility and decision making with your peers, the more impact you're going to have when you gain that formal authority. So, consider this. Effectiveness is far better than efficiency for knowledge workers, executive or not. It means getting the right things done rather than just doing things right. Or let me flip that. It's about getting the right things done, not just doing things right. Yeah, I got it. If you look back on a busy week, a very busy and efficient week, you may have gotten a lot done. But what was your measure of effectiveness? Think effectiveness over efficiency every day of the week. If you cut your action list in half, what is most important? There's a saying that we use inside of Level 52 when we question or challenge things, when the load feels too big. Do we want to move an inch in 12 different directions? Or do we want to move a foot in the direction that matters most? What matters most? It's a tough thing when you've got a lot of things happening, which is why executives need to consider the Think, Plan, Act framework, which enables effectiveness. It ensures that you're working on the right things rather than just being efficient at things that may not matter to you and your business. Which means that classic thing of managing your time, not just to rip through the list, but measuring where your precious resources are going. Making difficult decisions about where your time goes, most importantly, consolidating your tasks so that you have focused time to think. Focused time to think is often the thing that gets bypassed for the busy stuff that you think needs to occur. But when you do, this is what enables real prioritization, not reactive prioritization or the triage system that far too many leaders have a habit of rolling with. Triaging whatever here's right now, thinking you need to get everything done, when in fact you might not need to do that. So, how do you perform like an executive? Well, to perform like an executive, you have to practice like an executive. To practice like an executive, you have to think like an executive. Make that thinking time more important than anything else. And that will enhance your planning, your action, and not the other way around. So how do you perform like an executive? Practice like one. Build it into your practice to create that critical thinking time. Okay, our next topic is what we call different ways to think. All of us make up rules about ourselves, our business, and our lives, and those rules may have served you at some point, but we are obligated to challenge those rules and to think and act differently. So this section is inviting you to think differently. Consider it an exercise in thought diversity. Let's talk about confidence. You don't need confidence. You need something better. Confidence is often hailed as the golden ticket to success. We see this come up often when leaders go through our Leader 360 feedback system. And they get feedback from their managers that say something like, this person needs to develop more confidence. Now, confidence is the word people use, but what they mean is something different, at least in my opinion. Confidence can be fleeting. It can fluctuate with success or failure. Whereas conviction is unwavering. It's rooted in deeply held beliefs. It's rooted in values, the things that are most important to you. People are really drawn to conviction, not only because it often leads to faster decision making, but because it's authentic, it's steadfast, it's not subject to the whims of circumstance. It's the difference between saying you believe in something and demonstrating your belief through actions that you take. Look, confidence might get you in the door, but conviction keeps you in the room, and it keeps you moving forward when you face the inevitable headwinds that come through pursuing something important. So while other people chase confidence, you connect with the conviction that doesn't care what other people think, because that means you're pursuing your path with purpose. And that shows up as confidence, but is something far better. Okay, next we have the laboratory. This is where I share experiments I'm undertaking, experiments we're doing at level 52, or experiments our clients are taking. Some of these experiments end up being true game changers. Some of them fizzle naturally, but it's important to always be experimenting with something. And in this episode, your experiment is to resist the fix, the addiction that most leaders are faced with. This is an experiment several of our clients are taking on. So if they're taking these on, I'm guessing it might be relevant to you. Resisting the fix is one of the most challenging addictions leaders must overcome. Fixing things, it's a seductive trap because we get a rush of dopamine that comes from swooping in to solve problems, helping people. And when you do that, you benefit from the instant gratification of being the hero in the moment. But the problem is, this fix-it mentality will likely create a culture of dependency, stifling the growth, creativity, and autonomy of your team. So instead, what leaders need to really do is adopt something very similar to a coach approach. Because when you do the right things in the right way, this approach fosters an environment of self-awareness and resourcefulness in the people they work with. The challenge is, it means trading in your toolbox of solutions for a toolkit of curiosity and thought-provoking questions. It's about guiding your team to find their own solutions, empowering them to navigate challenges independently. What's the reward when you do this? Well, it's not that instant dopamine hit that you get from fixing things. The reward is When you invest your efforts in the right way, you get a team that's resilient, adaptable, and capable of tackling or taking down any metaphorical dragon that comes their way, which is what you want. So, if you subscribe to this as something that might be helpful, your experiment this month is to resist the fix. The real leadership high comes from seeing your team take the next step, soar on their own so there's less reliance on you. Your experiment is to notice when people are talking about problems they're facing inside the business. And rather than you jumping in to solve them, I want you to learn how to coach them so that they can see that problem differently. And when they can see their problem differently, they can engage with their problem differently. If you don't know where to start, then you need to jump into our upcoming webinar to get some tools to replace your addiction and replace it with something better. Okay, next we have a question to ponder. Think about this as a big question to soak into and reflect on. Reflection is a master skill for meaningful leaders. And so the questions we throw out here are an opportunity to see yourself in a different light so that you can choose consciously. Here's the question. Are you willing to be something different? Very different than are you willing to do something different? Are you willing to be something different? This will not shock you, but change is the law of life. It's also the law of business. But it's also one of the most challenging aspects of life and business is that we're faced with change. You know, for leaders, it's very easy to dream and want different results. But are you willing to become a different version of yourself to achieve them? It sounds like a very simple question. But change is hard because it's about breaking free from the comfortable cocoon of familiarity and stepping into the unknown. Every role that you take beyond your own is unfamiliar. Every change that you're unexpecting, it's just unfamiliar. Change is hard because of this unknown element. And so when you're in this space, it's about challenging your beliefs, questioning your habits, and rewriting your narrative. If you continue to be the same person, you're going to continue to get the same results. When you want to drive change as a leader, when the carpet is pulled from underneath you, ask yourself, are you ready to embrace change? Not just in your circumstances, but drive change within yourself. The number one indicator of leading a successful change is to look at that person in the glass that's looking back at you and consider, what are you willing to change to create the change that you're faced with? If you want to create change in your organization, your team, your family, this is the question you need to ask yourself. Whatever it is, because the simplest ingredient or element when you're looking at change is that change precedes change. If you want anything different, you have to be something different. You have to be willing to be something different so that you can lead, inspire, and deliver that outcome that you say you want. So, here's the question. Are you willing to be something different? That is a question worth pondering. Okay, by the way, a few things I want you to get on your radar. Number one, if you're not following Level 52 on LinkedIn, you need to follow Level 52 on LinkedIn right now. We post a lot of great resources beyond our podcast. Make sure that you follow us. Secondly, I mentioned a webinar. The webinar is the big mistakes leaders make when they're coaching and what to do instead. This is on October 9th at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. Adjust for your time zone and join me. You're going to learn some great tools and, just as importantly, what not to do. For those of you who are considering or have just found out about our ALP, our Accelerated Leader Program, well, there's a slight renovation to the program. We're constantly optimizing it, and there's a price adjustment. We've just completed these renovations. Participants can now look forward to an enhanced onboarding experience, some upgraded content, and an additional one-on-one coaching session in the program to deepen the learning. All of this is designed to maximize their growth. To align with these enhancements, and because of the exceptional value that this program continues to deliver, we're adjusting the base price for the seat in the ALP to 5,900 Canadian currency starting January 1st, 2025. Now, there are enterprise rates, but here's the thing. If you act now, you can make sure you lock in your rates in 2025 at the 2024 rates. So, thank you for listening to this sales pitch. I am doing this in service of you because I want you to grow. And if you've been thinking about attending this program, lock it in now so that 2025 can be your best year yet. All right, folks. Thanks for taking the time, investing the time to consider your leadership and the questions I threw at you. Your job is to make October meaningful, and I'll see you back in November.